Hey, I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanisms in a digital game called Legends of Runeterra. I don't have any fancy digital images to show you, but I do have these printouts from my initial play of Tales of Runeterra. I'll talk about those more in a minute. In brief, I mostly play tabletop games, but I've been trying to play maybe one new to me digital game a month to learn from the mechanisms, because I tend to learn a lot from digital games. And as fun as it is to watch videos about digital games, I learn a lot more by actually playing them. And this game surprised me in some ways that I probably wouldn't have seen from a review or playthrough video. The idea in this game is it is a kind of a Hearthstone Magic the Gathering style game where you're collecting cards, you're building a deck, and you are clashing with a single opponent. And I mostly went through the tutorial and I played a little bit of adventure mode, which I'll talk about in a minute. But there are a few things that I thought were really interesting about the game. One is your opening hand. So for these kind of types of collectible card games, you can often draw a hand of cards and not be happy with those cards. And so many of these games have like a mulligan system. You can mulligan, you can go down to fewer cards. Different games do it different ways. But I really like the way that this game did it. You get to look at your opening hand, and if there are any cards that you don't like, you just replace them. You only get to do it once per card, but I found that was really free. And you choose them all at once. So I could look at my hand and be like, okay, that one and that one don't really fit in here. I will replace them. And after I do that, that is my opening hand. But I like that freedom that you start out with the same number of cards and you can replace any number of cards. Really cool way to start out a round where you could otherwise be in a pinch after drawing a tough hand, or even just mulliganing and getting another random hand. My favorite mechanism, I think, of this entire game is the leveling up system. Because the champions you play, many of the cards you play, have a level up ability here. It feels like a short-term goal. Some of them might be longer-term goals, but many of them feel like a short-term goal. The overall goal is to reduce your opponent's shard, what is it called? Nexus to 0. That's the overall goal. But I like when games give you little short-term goals to play as well, and this game does that in the champions. So like Zed here, for example, says, "My shadows and I have struck the enemy Nexus twice." So they're all written in first person, which is a little odd, but I can see what they're doing here with the world building. "My shadows and I have struck the enemy Nexus twice." So if you strike the enemy Nexus twice, then Zed levels up. He becomes more powerful, or they become more powerful. I thought that was a really neat mechanism to have in the game, that a lot of champions have that. It leaves open a wide open card design space, because it's not just leveling up based on one single resource or mechanism. Every card is a little bit different based on their personality. Zed clearly wants to hit the enemy's Nexus. That's important to him. Every champion has something like that. So I thought that was wonderful, this leveling up mechanism. One other little thing I thought that was cool is that a lot of these, or some of the ones that I've seen, these digital trading card games, they have escalating resources. So in round 1, each player has 1 mana. In round 2, each player has 2 mana, and so on. But most of them have it so that if you don't use that mana, it goes away. And so you're often compelled to play the most expensive card in your hand, or play as many cards as possible, even if it isn't necessarily the best for your game state. The twist that Legends of Runeterra offers is that for up to 3 mana that you don't spend, you can save it, but you can only spend that mana on spells. So you can't spend it on standard cards. There are different types of cards that are spells that don't enter the battlefield. They're just temporary cards. And I thought that was a really neat way to do it. That you have this way of saving a little bit of mana, leaving it left over, but there's a limited way that you can actually spend that mana. I don't think it would work as well on the tabletop, be a little fiddly, but on the digital interface, it works great, being able to save over that mana. There's also a neat mechanism, I won't go into too much, but you can only attack once per round, and on every other round, you can't even attack. Only your opponent can attack. It's a very structured game in that way, and I think the digital interface keeps track of it nicely. The last thing I wanted to mention, I talked about earlier how I played a little bit of the adventure mode, and it reminded me so much of Slay the Spire, but in all the best ways. It really felt like I was going on an adventure in this land. I was kind of crawling through a city, going to different nodes that might be a battle, that might be a treasure, might get new cards, might be able to buy something. Felt like Slay the Spire, but applied to the theme of the Riot Games IP, which I know the best from the show Arcane, which I loved. But the feel of crawling through the city and gaining new cards and interacting with people, and having these AI battles rather than playing against human opponents, I found very satisfying. I really, really liked that adventure mode. So yeah, those are my thoughts and favorite mechanisms on Legends of Runeterra. If you've played it, and if you have played it, you probably played it way deeper than I have. I just played it for a few hours. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the mechanisms and the different leveling up systems and what happens in the adventure mode if some cool things happen later on. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks.